Welcome to the second video in this nano course on metacognition. I want you to experience metacognition in action. Let's take a moment to read the journal entry on the following slide. It's an entry I wrote during a recent backpacking trip with my students. As we read, I will demonstrate how I use metacognition by paying attention to if and how I monitor my comprehension, strategizing if I'm not comprehending, how to switch up my approach and use a different approach, and cater my reading approach to the specific style of the text. As I read, I'm going to pretend like I didn't write this and I'm approaching it for the first time. Thursday, May 3rd, 2018. Bunny Ears, Escalante National Monument, Utah. How exciting! We can begin to be metacognitive right from the start here. I'll start by demonstrating how I determine the style of writing and the strategy I will use to comprehend it. The way I do this is that I'm thinking to myself, this is a journal entry. How do I know? Well, first of all, I wrote it, even though I'm pretending like I didn't. And second of all, I was told that it's a journal entry. So I should expect it to take place in the first person, be descriptive, and have a narrative quality. I know that because of my experience with the writing style of journal entries. If it were a different style of writing, say something from the discipline of science, I would use my knowledge of that style to adapt how I approach it as a reader. But because of my experience with reading journal entries, seeing as this is a journal entry, I predict that it will be easy to read and I should focus on visualizing while I'm reading to put myself where the writer was when they wrote it. Now, let's go back to the text. Do I know what a place called Bunny Ears in Escalante, Utah should look like? Well, yes I do. I know Escalante National Monument is in the Utah desert, and I've been to the Utah desert, so I have some background knowledge there. I am primed to begin reading this text that's in the style of a journal entry with a focus on using the sensory clues to visualize the writer's experience, which is how I've determined I typically read journal entries. Next, I'll demonstrate how I monitor my comprehension and how I adjust my approach when I don't understand something. This morning, the rain fell again, and I opened my tent to sun-drenched canyon walls and a full glimmering rainbow. I'll stop there. Since I've been to the canyon lands in Utah, I am successfully able to visualize the canyon walls, but, reading on, I get confused by something else. What I didn't comprehend right away, or successfully visualize, was how the rain fell, but the writer opened her tent to sun-drenched walls. Because I was confused, I used metacognition. My brain momentarily questioned the sentence. I knew one strategy that usually works when I'm confused mid-sentence is to finish reading the rest of the sentence. Finishing the sentence, I see that the rain and sun were in the sky at the same time because there was a rainbow. It makes more sense now. I even imagine an experience I've had where it rains for a few hours, then the sun pops up and I expect to see a rainbow. In the writer's case, she came out of the tent and saw a rainbow. This makes sense because the rain had stopped and the sun shone on the moisture that remained in the air to create a rainbow. So, reading this sentence demonstrated two aspects of metacognition. One, I was able to monitor my comprehension. Yes, I understood the beginning of the sentence and was able to visualize it, but I had a bit of confusion mid-sentence. I also demonstrated how I tried out a strategy for comprehending confusing material by using context clues and finishing the sentence. Let's try it again. After the encore of that downpour, the clouds finally cleared and we felt the true heat of the desert sun. We continued to be awestruck by the power and beauty of nature. As I read the beginning of the first sentence, I got confused again. I thought to myself, the rain had finished already and I decided to use another strategy there. Let me reread that part of the sentence. After the encore of that downpour. Okay, so after rereading it, I see that the writer used a key word to signal that the rain had ended. The word encore to me means the final thing, like the last song at a concert. I learned the author is not saying that it's still raining, she's describing the rain that caused the rainbow as the final push of rain. She also refers to that downpour, signaling that she is talking about one she referred to previously using the signal word that. This makes sense now. I keep reading. The clouds finally cleared, and we felt the true heat of the desert sun. We continued to be awestruck by the power and beauty of nature. I'm going to stop again. I can use my initial strategy of visualizing to take that sensory input, and I fully understand this sentence after all. I used the cue word of finally to presume that it had rained for a while. This word right here. The rain cleared that morning after it had rained for a long time, and it was to be a hot day. Okay, after reading the last sentence, we continue to be awestruck by the power and beauty of nature. I assume its purpose is a signal or transition into the next idea. It refers to the future by saying we continued to be awestruck, and mentions the beauty of what I assume is the rainbow. I comprehend this whole sentence and recognize that it has me predicting the next paragraph, and that the next paragraph will deal with the power of nature. At this point, I feel like I'm comprehending the passage well, and will continue to read, seeing whether or not that truly was a transition sentence, and if the next paragraph is actually about the power of nature. Let's go ahead. Crossing the river, overcome by excitement and wrapped up in conversation, 2 students were toppled by the rushing current. They were swiftly rescued, one by me and one by my coworker. It scared them, but also thrilled and taught them. After reading this, I confirmed that yes, the previous paragraph ended with a transition. I know this because it mentioned the power and beauty of nature. It served to link the paragraph about beauty, or the rainbow, with the paragraph about students getting knocked over by the river, or the power of nature. This is making sense. As I read this paragraph, I do not experience confusion, and I'm able to visualize the entire thing. My mental images may be different than what the writer intended. For instance, I may imagine a much more violent toppling and a more intense current than what was actually there, but I get the idea that students were knocked over by the current and rescued by 2 adults in the group, one that happened to be the author. Did you struggle with comprehension in that paragraph? If so, what words, phrases, or sentence did you get hung up by? Did you do anything in that brief moment to solve your problem? Did you notice how quick metacognition is, and how you can actually miss it if you're not paying attention? Moving on, I want you to try it out. Your turn. Read the final 2 paragraphs on the next slide and pay attention to how you're monitoring your comprehension. If you adjust your approach when you get confused, and the strategies that you use knowing it's a journal entry. If and where does your comprehension break down? And what, if anything, do you do to repair it? Feel free to pause the video to finish your reading and process your metacognitive responses. After reading, consider, was there a moment when you were confused and you decided not to do anything about it? Why did you do that? Can you imagine a student reading a similar passage and making the same choice? What would be the consequence of choosing inaction when faced with confusion while reading through an entire passage? Let's dive deeper into the consequences of the choices we make when faced with confusion in our reading, the need to change strategies, or if we misread the style of writing and choose the wrong approach. Check out the next video in the course to learn how metacognition influences student comprehension of academic texts.